If we think about our relationship with money, quite often we go to what we earn, how much we've saved, how much we've grown. That's kind of like managing money. But there's an other side to managing our money, and it's really looking internally about our relationship with money. And our relationship is based on how we think about it, how we feel about it, because our emotions drive our financial behaviours. And then we all know that our financial actions and behaviours create our financial results. So quite often, if someone's wanting to make changes to their financial situation, they'll start with the doing part, but they really need to go back and start with the thinking part. What's the thought that's creating the emotions? That emotions are driving what I do or don't do.
The Get Rich Slow Club podcast is a collaboration between Tash Etchman from Tash Invest and Anna Christina from Perla. The Get Rich Slow Club acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land we record on. From coast to coast, across land, waters, and communities, we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Any advice is general and does not consider your financial situation, needs, or objectives, so consider whether it's appropriate for you.
Welcome to the Get Rich Slow Club podcast,
where we take you from beginner to confident investor,
where we can teach you everything you need to know about investing.
So come get rich slow with us. Today, we've got an awesome episode. We've got Karen Eley, who's a former financial advisor turned money coach. She helps people get clear on what's holding them back while growing their confidence and giving knowledge and support needed to make their dream life a reality. So we're going to dive into money stories, money blocks, how to improve your money psychology. But before we do, Karen, what is your money loss or win of the week?
And this one's very raw. I just got a quote an hour ago. So I've got a beautiful little niece and she needed some driving lessons. So I took her in my car and she drove my car into a tree.
Oh, no.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah,
wow.
serious damage. Yeah. So fortunately, I had insurance, but because she was underage, like with her learners, the excess is $2,500. So
oh no,
I lost this week.
Yeah, happy you're still here with us because an hour ago was quite fresh. Would have been a bit stressed then.
Yeah, well, yeah. I try not to stress too much about these things. So we are both safe and it's fine. The car can be fixed. So
I did that when I was I 17? I'd just gotten my license and I crashed my car and it ended up being, I think, the same. It was like $2,500, which is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, yes.
Yeah. Luckily, everyone's safe, like you said, but it is a bit of a traumatic experience, especially if you're a learner and you're trying to learn how to drive. And now you have an additional trauma of both financial and physical.
Yeah.
So
hopefully I didn't turn it into a trauma for her. So I'm really conscious of like when we're young and these things deeply impact us, which we'll talk about in the episode today. So I was very calm and fine. It's, she's okay. I'm okay. That's the main thing.
You sound like a great driving coach.
Yes, the perks of having an emergency fund and being fine in those situations.
Absolutely.
For sure. Tash, what about yours?
Maybe money win, but time loss. I started playing Minecraft. I was looking for a fun game. Yeah, crazy. And my boyfriend suggested it and I was a bit anti it for a little while, but we tried it and I actually really like it. And I think it was just free with his Xbox and he has the Xbox, so I didn't have to pay for that either. But we've spent a lot of time on it and it's only been like 2 days. So I understand why lots of kids are playing it these days because it's actually really good.
Yeah, I'm surprised that my kid knows what Minecraft is, although they've never played it. They just talk about it.
Interesting. So there's a lot you can do. It's very interesting.
Yeah, my son plays it all the time and he gets really creative and builds all these amazing worlds. I'm like, yeah, I could go down a rabbit warren with that. So I'm glad I haven't.
I haven't. I've just scratched the surface, only doing basic stuff, just started mining and stuff like that. But then I watch the YouTube videos where you see the massive worlds people create and it's just insane. It's so cool. But it was free for us. So that's a money win, I guess.
Awesome. Mine is a really simple one. It's a food one. I went to New Zealand last week with my mother and there was this beautiful little Latin kitchen place and I love Latin American food. The owner, I believe, is from Chile and we had some arepas that were amazing and I love good food and it was the highlight of my trip. I was like, I want to go back there again, but I didn't have enough time because it was one of the last places I ate before leaving Queenstown. But I love good food.
Yeah, what was it? Describe what it is. I didn't quite get what you were saying.
It's an arepa and it's kind of like a corn, it's not a tortilla, it's like a corn filled kind of, anyways, the way they made it was there's two corn kind of type, I don't know how to explain it. Someone's going to reach out to me and be like, you just butchered our food. But
okay, it's something savory and yummy.
It's savory. Yeah. They had like chicken and avocado in it and some cheese and a bunch of different things. But that part is like the kind of made out of corn, if that makes sense.
Is it like a quesadilla kind of vibe is in the shape, like the stuff in the middle of it?
No, because it was more, I don't know how to explain it, it was more like a sandwich vibe, kind of, if that made sense.
I'm going to Google it. That's okay.
Sorry, yeah, I'm not doing it justice, but I just love good food, and I was very excited to eat something that was so delicious. So yeah.
Amazing.
Great. So let's kick it off with Karen. You were a financial advisor for 15 years, and then you moved over to doing money coaching, focusing on money psychology. What was the reason for the big shift?
So I guess for the last 10 years of being a financial advisor, I was really curious about why people did what they did with money. So I love being a financial advisor, helping them invest money, have insurances, retirement planning, all of those things. But what I found was that we would recommend a rational, logical plan when it came to money and building wealth. And then some people were very irrational and do completely different things. So it got me down the path of wanting to learn more about the psychology of money. And then once I knew what the dynamics are that cause people to do what they do with money, I really just wanted to focus on that. So I sold my financial planning practice and really just work one-on-one with clients to help them uncover and overcome some of their challenging habits and behaviors or emotions relative to their finances.
I think one of the big misconceptions that people have is that if you have more money, that you might not have money hangups because you have additional money or cash at hand, and therefore life might come easier to you. Is that something that you saw within the clients and the people that you talk to?
Absolutely. The way we feel about money is completely uncorrelated to the amount that we earn or that we have. So I would find quite wealthy individuals still just feeling really miserable when it comes to money, or have complaints or have anxiety around spending it. So it doesn't matter if you've got not a lot of money or a lot of money, we can still have really challenging dynamics to overcome.
Did you have any challenging beliefs yourself about money? So you were like a financial planner and now you're a money coach. Do you have them, or did you have them in the past?
Great question, Tash. I certainly did, and happy to admit this. So I was a financial advisor. I knew all of the things that you needed to do to be good with money, but I had a little bit of a spending problem. So I found that I earned good money. I never got into debt, but I also just spent a lot more than I needed to spend rather than putting it away into investing. And so when I went through the process myself of going through the money coaching, I came up with some of my limiting beliefs or stories that I had around money. And when I was about 8-9 years old, I had money taken away from me out of my savings account. And then a couple of years later, I saw that my mum had money taken away from her. She had money put away in savings and someone took it. So I formed a belief that I was unaware of. It was in my unconscious part of my brain that I'd formed when I was very young, that my belief was, what's the point in saving money? Someone will take it away from you. And that actually did play out. So one time when I did kind of like, yes, I was in my 20s and I need to get better with money and start saving. So my partner at the time and I started putting money away every month into a savings account. And about 18 months later, we broke up and he took all of the money out of the account.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your biggest fear.
Yeah, that's right. So really want to talk about some of those experiences. But yeah, great question, Tash. So even though I was a financial advisor, I knew what I needed to do. I didn't always do it myself. And I think a lot of us have that. There's a big behavioral gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it. So I know what's necessary in order to close that gap.
How did you, if you like finally figured out what that unconscious belief was and you're like, wow, that has played out over and over again in my life, how do you actually work through that?
So the first thing is to identify it, Tash. So it was not something that I was aware of. It wasn't till I went through the process and did an exercise of writing out my entire money story that I remembered that. It's like, oh yeah, that happened. And then that happened. And then the wonderful woman that coached me said, well, what do you think you decided about money? And I was like, well, what's the point in saving? Someone will take it away from me. So then I had to unlearn what I learned as a child and start telling myself and believing and knowing that I'm an adult, I can protect my money. And from that day forward, having that awareness and really focusing on it's safe to save, I can look after my money, I have gone to save significant amounts of money, way more than I need for that car excess insurance. So, yeah, it was game-changing for me.
Can we just take a few steps back? You talked about you wrote out your money story. For someone who hasn't dove deep into their own kind of money story, well, how do you even do that? What's the first step to actually tap into your unconscious bias?
So the first thing you want to do is start writing on a piece of paper, or you can use a Word document or Google Sheet and just start typing out. And you want to do it over the course of a week or maybe even a fortnight. I took a fortnight to do mine. So just getting out a piece of paper, what's my first memory that I had around money? And for me, it was those, you won't be old enough, but some of the listeners might remember that when you had savings account, it was in a passport, and you go into the bank and they would print the balance and your deposit in the passport. So we had these passports.
So cool. I feel like we almost need that again these days because it's kind of so like out of sight, out of mind, but that would have been really fun.
It was.
Oh my gosh, I had that. I remember that, Karen.
Yeah,
we had that in Canada. Yeah.
It's just like a little booklet. It's about as big as an iPhone, and you go into the bank and it'll just print out, the teller would print out what you've got in there, the balance, how much you've taken out, how much you've put in. So yeah, that was my first memory. What I see with other clients, school banking. So if you had school banking, maybe getting pocket money, maybe even taking $5 or $2 down to the local grocery store and spending the money. So you want to work out what's your earliest memories, and then you just keep going. So that might have been 7 years old. What do you remember at the age of 10, 12? Do you remember your first job? What was that like for you? Did you earn good money? Was it really hard? Was it easy to earn? Then things like moving out of home. What memories do you have around that? And you just keep writing out year after year consecutively all the way through to the present day. So that can take a long time. So it's like maybe do it for half an hour and some things will come up, and then save the document or close the book and then go back to it a couple of days later. And by doing that, what we're actually doing is we're accessing a part of our brain that it's not conscious. It's not something that we think about day to day or have a conscious awareness of it. So we're starting to access a part of our brain that's pretty much switched off. But when you do that, more things will come up. So if you leave it a few days and then go back to it, it's like, oh, that's right. I remember that happened to me relative to money, or when my parents argued about money, or notice like wealthy kids at school. What were they like? Were they good and nice and generous, or they mean and nasty? Because all of those experiences start to help us form our beliefs about money, about the use of money, what the meaning of money is, our worthiness to having money, or maybe about wealthy people.
If you've got kids and you're listening to this and you're like, wow, I want to make sure that I don't give my kids the wrong idea or the wrong beliefs about money. Is there like a wrong belief around money, or is that a negative thing to say? But also, like, how do you ensure that they have maybe the better beliefs about money or the helpful beliefs about it?
Yeah, I think there's definitely more healthy things
that's a better word.
that we can say about money. So, and what's really important, so when I work with clients and they grew up in a household where mum was one way with money and dad was another way with money, or they had opposite caregivers that were different, it's really challenging and it causes conflict for the child. So as children, we look at our parents as role models to how do we do certain things. And that's role models around our health and fitness and our eating habits. It's around our money. It's around how we interrelate with other people. So if a child is looking and seeing one person spending it all, not really caring about it, and the other person is really frugal and it's really important, it's hard for the child to work out, well, which is the right way to do it. So that's number one for parents listening. Be on the same page when it comes to money and having the same messages. So there's an alignment there. Even if you don't naturally do that in front of the children, you just want to be really conscious about doing that. The second thing is language. What are the things that we are saying out loud that our children are absorbing? So if we say, like, we can't afford that, it's like, well, you might be able to afford that. You could sell the house or the car or sell something and actually buy that. So it's like you want to change that language to it's not aligned to our values, or we have certain goals and we want to spend our money on this rather than other things.
When I was Yeah, growing up, my mum is very risk averse. My dad likes to take risks, but it was quite interesting watching them have those discussions openly in front of us. And it wasn't like a big conflict thing, and it wasn't super emotional. It was just like them discussing pros and cons of different things and like which way they were going to move forward, and then ending up meeting in the middle. So it was still good to be able to see the two opposites as well, and then how they actually make that work. Because I guess it's hard if you're like, oh, everyone thinks the same and like everyone just believes the same thing. But then seeing two people try and work that out was very interesting for me.
Yeah. And what is great about what your parents did, Tash, was they spoke about it and they explained it to you. Whereas a lot of parents like, oh, the kids are too little, we just don't talk about money. So I work with clients that just have no idea. They were completely financially sheltered. They never spoke about money, so they never learned about money. So having those open conversations around your children that are age appropriate to them is a really, really healthy habit to have to help build financially resilient children.
Have you always spoken to your children about money?
I have, yes. Actually, I should correct myself. Not so much before I did this work, but now I know what I know. For the last 6 or 7 years, I have been very open and transparent, but also very conscious and aware and intentional about the messages I want my children to take away relative to money.
And what are those messages?
So those messages are that, what's a good one? So very much around the money that we have for today isn't just for today. We want to be putting some away for our future as well. It is really around, I've always had, and I know there's different rules of thought around pocket money with children. So we have in our household that there's certain things that you need to do, like unstacking the dishwasher or taking the rubbish out, and that's just part of being part of the family. But I've always communicated with my children that I'm giving you some pocket money, and the reason I'm doing that is to give you lessons that you can have about money. So I just kind of let them go for the first few years. So I had one that was a spender. He'd save it as soon as he got it, and the other one would just hoard it and put it away. And the spender, after a couple of years, started to see that his brother was getting a lot more in his bank accounts and savings. And so then he learned the lesson that, maybe I don't need to spend it all. So over those years, rather than me telling him what to do, what's right and wrong, he's actually being able to use that money as lessons for him. And it's much better to learn these lessons younger than it is in our 20s and 30s when we can have higher significant financial consequences to them.
I think that's the key, right? Like creating situations where kids can learn about money and then they can make those mistakes in a safe space so that when they go to adulthood, they're not making those mistakes in their 20s or in their 30s. They've already made those mistakes. They've walked through it. They've learned all of that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, such important lessons.
Yeah. And so we've had an investment property. So as little kids, I'd take them to the investment property and we'd have a look and I'd explain. They know about shares. So but it's always been age appropriate. So depending on how old they are, I'll just give them more information as we go.
What are some of the reasons why someone is better at saving or investing or earning money while others have to live from paycheck to paycheck and they aren't making any financial progress? I know you've mentioned your kids were very different in those early days as well, in terms of one being a saver, one a spender. What makes us who we are in terms of what we want to do, whether we're a spender or a saver?
A lot of it is tied up to our brain and how our brain works. So we've got this amazing organ called a brain. It's more powerful than any computer, but a part of it instinctively is hardwired not to actually do us any favors when it comes to our money. So one of the functions of part of our brain, the physiological, instinctive, primitive part of our brain, is to keep us safe and to keep us out of danger. And its definition of doing that is to keep us with what's familiar and certain to us. So unfortunately, if you grow up in an environment where you live pay to pay or you'd spend money using debt, then that is what's familiar to you. So our brain is hardwired to keep us in that state of whatever that is that you had growing up. So that is one part. The other part of that is around our beliefs that we form. So we talked about most of the way that we are with money was formed between the ages of 2 and 12. So there's psychology research that say that our patterns and behaviours are formed by the age of 7, because that's when we have most of our brain development. So just like I shared my example of what I believed about money and saving, as children we've all formed our own beliefs around that. And so depending on if those beliefs were positive around it's easy to earn money, money will always be there, putting some money away for a rainy day is something that I believe in as being important, that's when we create those really good behaviors and financial results. But if they're different and more challenging, we kind of get stuck in that cycle. And so we live all of our strategies and our patterns day after day. So without actually examining them and having a look at, well, what was the origin that was formed for me to actually believe that or do those certain things? Unless we do that, we just operate on autopilot.
What's some of the most common limiting beliefs you see come up? Is there one that kind of dominates them all, or are they very different from each other?
They're very different one, and our own money beliefs are about as unique as our thumbprint. They're very, very unique to us. But some of the common ones that I do see playing out is that I'm just not good with money.
I hear that all the time.
All the time.
That's not for me. Rich people are evil. That's definitely not for me, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm bad with money. And they've created that as an identity. And as soon as I hear that coming out someone's mouth, I pause them and say, we're never going to say that about ourselves again. I'm learning to be better with money, or whatever it is. That's going to be a healthier message that you're telling yourself. One of the big reasons why that one is formed is that they weren't very good at maths at school, and maybe they were shamed or embarrassed. And when we have those really strong emotions, there's an emotional charge, and our neural pathways fire and wire. So the more emotion that was attached around it, the deeper that gets hardwired. And we really, really believe that. And then we're just constantly looking for experiences that prove ourselves right.
Confirmation bias, yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
And especially if we're saying the same thing over and over, right? Like,
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Another one might be money causes arguments, so I want nothing to do with it. So if they grew up in an environment where their parents argued about money, or maybe their parents separated when they were young and there was like dynamics around using money to control the children or the other partner, quite often they just don't want anything to do with it because they see it as a bad thing that hurts people.
One of the things I often think about, Karen, is like sometimes I've done my money story and I know some of my limiting beliefs. Is it worth going back and re-examining it every once in a while? Like, what are your thoughts? Is that something that you would advise?
Yeah, I think doing it initially, it's a really interesting and valuable experience for everybody to do it, to really sit down and take a couple of hours and write out my money story. Because what you want to look at is, what are the themes and patterns that repeat over and over again? And so when you're writing out those money stories, what emotions came up for you? Because emotions are a really important part as well. I update my money story every year. So what are those things that happened to me this year or that I experienced this year? And is there anything that I need to look in there, or are there any themes that are coming up again? So, yeah, I think it's a really valuable exercise for everybody to go through.
I love that you do it annually. That might be an added thing to add to the list at the beginning of the year, or like to do it annually, because I've talked to Tash previously about this kind of stuff where I feel like I have a good handle on my finances, on life, but every once in a while you realize you have a hang up about something, whether it's like I'm scared to ask for a raise, or I don't feel like I can start a business, or whatever it might be, because you're in a different part of your life. So it might not be the spending and the saving and the investing, but it might be something that's tied to finances in a different type of way. Like I'm not worth the raise, or I feel like, my job means X, Y, Z, and all those things are kind of linked to finances.
Do you want to talk about that business one, Anna? Because I know you were talking about like starting your own thing for so long, and then you finally did it recently, which is very exciting. But what were your beliefs around that beforehand?
Yeah, it's true. So I've talked to Tash about this probably off the air, not really on the air, but one of the things for the longest time for me was I never wanted to like start my own business or my own thing because I didn't think that I was good enough or it was worth it or anyone would pay me to go do a specific thing. I also have always really loved my job, every job that I've had, including this one. And I love what I'm doing and creating value that way. So some of these things that I needed to work through myself was like, where does this idea come from? And a lot of it is around risk, reward, validation, whether I'm worth it, like these different levels where it's not just money. It's deeper, and that's essentially what you're talking about, Karen. So I don't know if you have any insights of me sharing my own personal journry over the last couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important. So when you said about, like I feel afraid or, those emotions are really what drives our financial behaviors. So if we think about our relationship with money, quite often we go to what we earn, how much we've saved, how much we've grown. That's kind of like managing money. But there's an other side to managing our money, and it's really looking internally about our relationship with money. And our relationship is based on how we think about it, those beliefs that we've talked about, how we feel about it, because our emotions drive our financial behaviors. So if an emotion is like, oh, I feel a bit embarrassed, I feel awkward asking for something, then that is driving your actions to not do something or to do something. And then we all know that our financial actions and behaviors create our financial results. So quite often, if someone's wanting to make changes to their financial situation, they'll start with the doing part, but they really need to go back and start with the thinking part. What's the thought that's creating the emotions? That emotions are driving what I do or don't do. I think one of our biggest addictions or challenges today as humans is our addiction to our own emotional states.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, tell us more.
That's a big statement. Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I mean about that is that we all experience like a range of a couple of different emotions every day, and we just repeat them over and over again. So we might have an emotion that we experience. So like I might have been grumpy a couple of hours ago about what happened about the premium. But then I was grumpy for like 10, 15 minutes and I moved out of it. So it was a mood. If tomorrow I was grumpy again or I stayed grumpy for a few hours, it lasts a bit longer. It starts to become a temperament, like I'm a bit of a grumpy person. And then if I experience it day after day and things just get me irritable or I get angry at things, then it moves from a mood to a temperament to a personality. It becomes part of me. I identify as that type of person. So when we think of it relative to money, there are do you know what the three most common emotions are that people experience relative to money? So to guess.
Shame,
Ooh.
guilt,
Take a guess.
stress.
Shame, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, shame, guilt, and fear, which is driven by the stress.
Fear.
Yeah. Yeah. So part of writing out your story is having a think about what are the three most common emotions that I feel relative to money when I'm earning it, when I'm managing it, when I'm thinking about it, when I'm spending it, and start there.
Crazy. That's a big, deep thought.
Tip.
You've maybe, like, I definitely was someone who was, I don't know if it's related to money in the same way, but I was addicted to stress for so long. And I kept putting myself in stressful situations and saying yes to things I knew I probably couldn't meet. And I sometimes still do it these days, not as badly, but yeah, interesting to reflect back and be like, oh yeah, I was definitely addicted to that, like living in that state the whole time.
And it's that, like I said, it's that addiction to that emotional state of being stressed.
And it's uncomfortable being bored.
It is. Yeah, that's right. And then it goes back to, I was talking about that part of our brain that wants to keep us safe, and its definition of safe is what's familiar. So if you've had that experience over and over again, going to something that's unfamiliar, like doing nothing or relaxing, that can be very uncomfortable. And your brain doesn't want you to do that.
So we've dove into all of the different things of how to kind of look at your money story, think about your money story, identify parts of your money story. How do you rewrite your story? How do you break from that? How do you open up those blocks that you have around money and actually make those change?
Yeah, because it's quite good to be like, oh yeah, I'm embarrassed asking for a pay rise. But then how do you actually do the thing and ask for a pay rise if you're still feeling embarrassed?
So then it's about what's causing the embarrassment. So I feel embarrassment about asking for a pay rise. Go back to the thought that's creating that embarrassment. So what is your thought or belief? And your belief might be, I don't feel worthy, or I don't want to put other people under financial stress. Maybe they can't afford to pay me more. What is that belief that's coming up? And then identify that belief. And it's like, well, when's the first time did I decide that? So going back into your childhood to say, oh, okay, I remember this time when, and sometimes, and especially around that worthiness, Anna, is quite often I see parents playing out where they didn't have a lot of money. And so the child didn't want to give their parents any more stress. And so they felt guilty or embarrassed or awkward around, I just don't want my parents to feel bad. So rather than asking for this toy that I want or these shoes that I want, I'm not going to ask because I don't want to cause pain to my parents. And then when we do that year after year, then it just becomes a strategy that we live out. And it may not be our parents anymore. It might be our boss, or it might be our clients if we're self-employed. So it's about going back to examining the emotion, working out what are the beliefs that are determining those emotions, and then questioning those beliefs in the light of today as an adult. is it a rational, logical belief, or do I need to believe something new? And so just like we form those beliefs, we can unlearn what we learned growing up, but it does take time and consistency. So if we use that example that I had of like, it's safe to save, I can protect my money. I wrote it out in a million places. I had it as a screensaver on my phone. Whatever that belief is that you're wanting to change, you just want to rewire those neural pathways and create new consistency around it. So I'm worthy to ask for more money. What I do is of value, so for your example. And so we just want to rewire those neural pathways so it becomes second nature to us. So I've never played the guitar before. So if I picked up a guitar, I just wouldn't be able to play it. But if for the next 6 months I practice and I create chords and I just practice and practice, what that will do is it'll rewire new neural pathways that, okay, I now know how to play the guitar and I can pick up a guitar and start playing. But it's only going to change by actually doing the work and doing it consistently and practicing. So science of neuroscience shows us that we've got elasticity and we can change those patterns in our brains, but it just does take consistency. So it's about what's that belief that we believe? If it's challenging us or not healthy, what is a healthy alternative? And we need to start telling ourselves that very consistently all of the time.
And if someone's identified this and they want to get help with it, they can go see a money coach like you. How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes we need some bit of extra help. We can get there ourselves, but we can get there quicker with some help and someone looking at it from a different perspective. So yes, there are quite a few certified money coaches or people that have done the psychology around money. And so you can, you can work with those over a period of 3 months or 6 months just to help you with all of those tools and exercises and support to move from one way of being to another way.
In an ideal world, do you think someone would see a money coach first and then see a financial planner later on? Or does it not really matter which order you see them in?
So I really feel like our psychology around money is the financial foundation. So you want a really strong financial foundation and then you build onto cash flow, then you build onto investing and you layer it up from there. So for some people that feel like none of this that we've been talking about today is relative to them, then going to see a financial advisor is great. But quite often people go and see a financial advisor and the financial advisor says, actually, you need to go and see a Karen first because you've got some challenging dynamics around money, whether it be overspending or indecision and not being able to make any decisions or just having a fear around money or a fear around investing. If you're having those types of challenges, seeing a money coach or doing this work yourself internally can be a really good start before you go and see a financial advisor. We work really well together.
This next question is more like my curiosity. I see lots of people every day online and they're like, I don't know what to do next. I'm really stuck. I can't afford financial advice. I can't afford to pay for a money coach right now. What do you think is like something that needs to change in Australia's financial system so we can kind of get people the advice that they need? Because it's kind of not really working in my eyes. Like financial advisors are very expensive and hard to access. Hopefully money coaches will get more recognized soon, but they're also there's not that many of them. They're not as well known. It's not as regulated yet. What do you think is the solution there?
Yeah, look, I think it's a really challenging space and I hope that the government steps up and have some more reforms in this regard. And that is one of the reasons that I stopped being a financial advisor because I saw that so many people can't actually access good quality financial support, whether it be advice or information. And I think what you ladies do in this podcast is so valuable. So sometimes that is the only option available. And it's just looking at the whole financial ecosystem. So we've got educators out there. Maybe that's your first step. We've got coaches out there that are at a lower price point than financial advisors. Maybe that's your next step. There are some really interesting digital advice solutions coming into the marketplace. Maybe that's your next step before seeing a financial advisor.
What's the digital solutions are you talking about? Is it Maslow I've seen pop up?
So, there's Maslow. There's ones like Money GPS. There's ones that I've consulted with, Wealth Maximizer. So they're a combination of that digital advice with a human interaction as well. So licensed financial advisors. So
awesome.
There is a few options coming up there. And I think the government is definitely going to be pushing to have the banks and super funds specifically back in that financial ecosystem to provide financial advice for clients out there.
Very interesting.
Lots more work to be done, Tash,
Yes.
as you and I both know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's really important with stats showing that financial literacy is dropping across from year on year. So we absolutely need access to money coaches, financial advisors, educators, like just learning about money, because it's not just savings and spending and investing. It's so much more nuanced based on every person. And like we just talked about, just having specific limiting beliefs, having money stories, like there are things that we need to work through. And unless we have the tools to make those changes, we're not going to see an improvement, I think, with financial literacy across Australia.
Yeah, completely
Holistically.
agree.
Yeah. So Karen, for anyone who wants to get into investing and start building their wealth, where should they actually start?
Well, I think one of the best investments people can make is investing in themselves. So whether that be investing time and energy into yourself to actually explore your money story, what are those things that are challenging you, or investing in a money coach to help you transform some of your limiting beliefs or your behaviors relative to money, that can be the best investment that you can make, and then work on from there. So then you can kind of work on, well, what do I need to do with my cash flow, with my investing, with my long-term wealth creation.
That's such a great tip. And Karen, if people want to find you, where can they find you?
They can find me at womentalkingfinance.com.au or also on LinkedIn. I spent a bit of time there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a great chat.
Thank you both for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us. If you found this episode helpful, please rate us 5 stars, write a review, or share with a friend. If you're new to investing, make sure to listen to our first 10 episodes. Follow us at Get Rich Slow Club or Tash at Tash Invest or me at Ana Cristina.
This show was brought to you by Natasha Etchman, who is an authorised representative 1299881 of Guideway Financial Services, AFSL 420367, and Perla, who is an authorised representative 1281540 of Sanlam Private Wealth, AFSL 337927. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to investing. So make sure you check out our financial services guides and read the product disclosure statement and target market determination for any investments you're considering. See our show notes for more info.